What's up, guys? Today I'm going to be talking about how you should view yourself and what you shouldn't do. Now, recently I've come across a lot of figures, either through just science or literature, and the common theme about all these people is that they all sort of died considering themselves either a failure or just not thinking they accomplished anything of acclaim. And usually, all these people, after death, posthumous, I forgot the term, posthumously or something like that, they achieved great critical acclaim. Now, this is actually not so uncommon, and quite recently, I've heard a lot of mentions of different people like this throughout uh, many different things. A seminar I attended and just reading online. And a few of these people I'm just going to mention. The biggest I want to bring up is the author of The Great Gatsby. His last name is Fitzgerald, and I'm sure you guys know him. And long story short, I was looking on his Wikipedia, and essentially he he thought he called himself a failure upon his death, and he had only sold around like 25,000 copies total of his book, and he regarded himself as a failure upon death, at least according to Wikipedia. Who knows if that's right or not? But only after death, and after many decades of sort of resurgence of this book, now it is a very, very popular book, one of huge academic acclaim, and something that sort of it's sold 25 million copies now. It sells 500,000 per year. It is one of the great literature classics, and so forth. And so this is just one single example of many occurrences. This goes through a lot of different areas. There's artists who are very similar. Vincent van Gogh, his paintings as of now are priceless. They are irreplaceable, and they're so valuable that they are priceless. Yet he did not receive acclaim when he was living. In fact, I believe he worked on the streets and died without any sort of recognition. And this goes to music as well. And just to bring it back to modern times real quick, rather than, I mean, there's a lot of old musicians in the classical era or the Baroque era who are very similar. But to bring it back to modernish times, quite recently in a seminar, there's a lot of people who have had tremendous innovation, and sometimes, despite trying a million times and still failing to create something of innovative success, they ended up finding some sort of invention or something at the end of the day through accident. Penicillin is something that was I wouldn't say invented. It wasn't invented, but it was discovered by accident. And this guy, he did not, like a lot of these people who created all these things, did not receive critical acclaim or fame or monetary gain from it, and a lot of them didn't get any recognition until they died. And that's just how it is. And the moral of the story, and I can go on giving you examples and people, I'm sure you can find a lot out there yourselves. I mean, I think, and I could be wrong, but there are freaking people who have not won Nobel Prizes until after they've died as well. I'm pretty sure that's true. But the message of this is, don't view yourself as a failure unless you're okay with going around depressed constantly, because you don't ever know what's going to happen 100 or 1,000 years from now. And yeah, a lot of people who were innovative geniuses. I mean, the people were who who were the primary founders of the internet, they didn't necessarily become millionaires or billionaires, and they for sure didn't become famous or any of that stuff. And yeah, that's just another example. But the point is, don't go through life, and those people had it good. I mean, if you compare them to like this Fitzgerald guy who made The Great Gatsby, I mean, he lived a pretty depressing life. Like, he constantly looked at himself as a failure, apparently, according to his Wikipedia, and died, so forth. Another example, I mean, there's so many just popping into my head, is the author of the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo novel series. He made these books, these novels, and he sort of just shelved them, and then he died, and then the books blew up. The books have sold millions. There have been movies made about these books, and now the rest of his family is fighting over who gets the profit from these books. There's been millions made, and it's a whole legal debacle, and I really think it is quite tragic that like their family is fighting over money and not really concerned about the bigger picture, which was honoring this guy who had such talent and died living a pretty normal life with not a lot of riches. He lived a pretty, I believe his job wasn't actually a novel or a novel author. How do you say that? A book author. His job was something else, and then he just wrote these novels for fun. And so he died just thinking of himself as this average dude with not a huge amount of talent or potential. And yeah, it's a little bit tragic, but that's not the point. Like, the message is, there's a lot of people out there who they go through this. Like, they try hella hard, they try really, really hard, and they try all these different things to get success in certain ways or others, and they're so much better off than those people who are like dead lazy and have no passion or drive and just sit there, and yet they get nothing out of it. All their attempts fail, and they get depressed and they think of themselves as a failure. And so I really think that to avoid that, you kind of have to, you have to have a few things. One is, you can't like base your success or your happiness on like external things like money or fame to consider yourself as a success or failure. Now, there's a certain degree where it's good to do, but sometimes like you could end up like these people. Like, you have tremendous talent, and it's not until years after you died where people actually bother to recognize it. And so that could end up being you, but that's not always the case. And at the same time, there are people like Bill Gates and Warren Buffett who are the richest people in the world, and yet they really just, they focused on the success of their business and they weren't concerned about making millions of dollars. So don't base your happiness on external things like money or fame, and also just don't beat yourself up over failure. Now, again, if you're a person with no passion or drive and no attempt at even trying to achieve any greatness or any innovation, then you're in a different boat. You kind of have to look at things differently and sort of maybe beat yourself up at least a little bit, so that you do in fact actually make some money and don't just end up broke as a homeless guy. But for those guys who try really hard and fail, just keep this in mind. And I really feel that there's a lot of potential in a lot of people, including me, and sometimes life just doesn't always lead you down the road to optimal financial success and so forth. And that's just how it is sometimes, and you shouldn't beat yourself up over it. I know a lot of people who could have potentially become really good at maybe music or writing stories or just drawing stuff, and for one reason or other, because of maybe family things or lack of resources, they weren't able to accomplish that. It's sort of like the thing where, like, the saying where the greatest chess player in the world could be born and never be taught how to play chess, and then it leads to nothing. It's the same sort of thing sometimes. Sometimes circumstances don't work out. You might have tremendous talent to play chess, but if you're never exposed to chess, it's useless. And so I really think that don't always think of life like in that sort of mindset where people are born with a talent, and if it's not used to its full potential, it's wasted. Again, with the chess analogy, I think you should just try your best and be level-headed and do your thing. And I'm blanking out on all these other sort of scientists. There's a lot of scientists, in fact, that were referenced in the seminar. And here's the thing: I went to this seminar, and the topic wasn't by any means on people who like didn't achieve critical acclaim or success until after they died. That wasn't the topic of the seminar. The seminar was simply on innovation and creation and how to better your creativity and innovation and so forth. But the thing was that the speaker kept referencing all these people, and again, I'm blanking out on a lot of them. They're just random people that you wouldn't recognize if I were to give you the name, that I wouldn't recognize. Again, that's just another sort of reminder that these dudes never received like fame in any way. And yet at the same time, like when the speaker was listing all these names, she was listing them in order to prove a point that you can achieve you can achieve great things sometimes by accident, and through innovation and trial and error. And she was also giving a point that you could fail 1,000 times before finally inventing something that works. And the one thing I noticed about a lot, like most of these guys that she was mentioning, was one, I didn't recognize any of them. Like, they were not names that were recognizable to the general public. These were scientists who ended up achieving a Nobel Prize or something else. But the biggest thing I noticed about them was a lot of them, despite achieving this tremendous innovative thing that either revolutionized how we thought about science or technology or so forth, they ended up not getting rich off of it at all, and a lot of times not achieving fame or acclaim until after they died. And some of them were, and if you are into science and you know a little bit about the scientific community, you understand this, but some of these guys were like, they weren't just like treated, they weren't even treated well. A lot of them had ideas that were completely contrary to either religious views at the time, or sometimes not, just science in general. It didn't agree with the social, or not social, but science norm at the time. So for example, and this is just something I'm pointing out. If the scientific community at the time thought, okay, we as a community have come to a consensus that you can't get infected from this disease unless you do this, or like you're exposed to this sort of environment. Then this guy comes in and he says, no, I think differently. Then a lot of times, especially back in the day, they weren't even treated well. They were like abused. They were like everyone was against them, and he just was treated badly. And some of these people that were mentioned in the seminar were like that, and it was very sad because they died before their point was proven, and that's just how it is. Some of these people held on to scientific beliefs, and they couldn't prove them because the technology at the time wasn't available, and yet they still held on to these, and it wasn't proven until decades after they died. So I don't know what to say about this. The biggest thing would be what I saw with I think his first name Scott Fitzgerald, who created the book The Great Gatsby, and there's just a movie made this year on The Great Gatsby, and it's kind of sad, he regarded himself as a failure, not being able to sell his book that much, and people during his time regarded his book as just a passing sort of book of the age, and only decades after his death and a lot of build-up did his book achieve critical acclaim. And it's just an unhealthy way to live your life, and just realize sometimes maybe that might happen to you. I don't know. So don't get depressed about it. I really feel like you have to sort of look within for happiness rather than like with Fitzgerald. Otherwise you can be screwed over, and there you are, you've already created a masterpiece, and just because everyone hates it or doesn't think it's worth anything doesn't mean it's not worth anything. So I guess my point is, stick to your guns, don't look to externals for happiness, and just keep trying to innovate new things and be proud of what you accomplish. I don't know. Again, this is the first take, so I hope you guys liked this video. If you did, hit the subscribe button, like this video if you liked it. I know this was a sort of informal thing, but I did it all in one take, and on top of that was my first take. And I completely apologize if some of my words were sort of jumbled or didn't make sense or were sort of muddy, but I tried my best, and I think this is the better, more efficient way of doing things as of right now. Editing this would be such a pain, and it might just ruin the whole sort of vibe of this, and it kind of makes me sort of do things differently if I know I'm going to edit it up and chop it up into little clips and then put it together. So I hope you guys like this, and if you guys are looking for like quality stuff, like skits where I do edit and stuff like that, I may eventually do it, or most likely it will just be like another rant, which will be like very economically edited, so it's like very clean and pre-prepared and not sort of sloppy like this. That may or may not come in the future, but let me know what you guys think in the comments. I think this was just it was a sort of informal talk that really addressed all my points. So I hope you guys like it, and it is quite an interesting sort of topic. So as always, like, favorite, comment, and subscribe. I'll see you guys later. This is Will, and I'm signing out.